Welcome to Millennial Man, the 13th floor, chapter 5, Pleasure Seeking and Self-Control. It's an important topic. Millennial Men, we have certainly had a critical topic in the discussion of pleasure seeking and self-control. This topic is important for all people. It should be understood and taught regularly. It's quite unfortunate that self-control and pleasure seeking is not a normal part of our education criteria for the young and old alike. Pleasure seeking comes in many forms, some good and productive and some bad and destructive. Sexual pleasures, taste, smell, texture of food, exercise, the euphoria of exertion, praise or service in your spiritual beliefs, sports, receiving compliments or verbal praise, likes or views on social media, spending money, earning money, gambling, control over others, risk-taking, serving others with time and money, drugs and alcohol, etc., etc. These are all just a few ways people gain pleasure, experience pleasure, and fulfill their desires for pleasure. The reason pleasure seeking is a critical discussion for the millennial man is that it can become a destructive factor in our success as men, leading our homes, community, and government if we allow pleasure seeking to get out of our control. The lack of control over pleasure seeking is a common thing among men and women. This unfortunate truth is tied directly to addiction, dysfunction, and nearly all of our problems as a society collectively. There are those who gain pleasure by hurting or harming people, causing chaos and confusion purposely, lying, sneaking. Some get pleasure by taking advantage of the weak or ignorant. These people are a real issue. They do exist. In fact, some of you reading or hearing this book are like that. The truth is, some men have serious issues in their way of thinking that needs to be corrected and worked on. I've been doing this all my life. The first step is recognition, then discussion, making amends, forgiveness of yourself and others, then seeking and finding our purpose in life, our Creator's intended purpose. Whatever the case may be, the bottom line is when we gain self-control over desire to seek pleasure, especially when our pleasure is harmful to others, we become better people and we can help others do and learn the same. We all have the ability and need to practice self-control, and the point to the millennial man is this: we want to stand up for what is right and just when others won't. We want to disprove the destructive living habits of our society currently. And in order to accomplish this feat successfully, we must practice and teach self-control. We must understand these principles to the fullest. Our drive to stand for justice should be stronger than our drive to pleasure ourselves. The evidence of success will speak for itself. Men often fail to realize how their pleasure seeking actually harms others, even if not in a direct way. If I see a solution to a problem and ignore any action, I am inadvertently aiding in the problem. If I have an ability to help my community and I refuse, I am depriving them of betterment in an indirect way by not doing my duty as a millennial man and sharing my abilities. If I neglect this duty in order to pleasure myself, I'm failing. Some gain pleasure from building up, some from tearing down. Whatever the case may be, the millennial man needs to consider this idea of self-control and pleasure-seeking in order to address the many problems we see within our society. This issue is a psychological problem, a moral problem, a spiritual problem, and all wrapped up, This issue is a psychological problem, a moral problem, a physical problem, and a spiritual problem all wrapped up in one. And it is a problem that has a potential to exist in everyone's mind. It has an impact on everyone within our society and does great harm, especially to our duty as millennial men. With so many different ways one gains pleasure, I want to list a few that are most significant to our discussion in Millennial Man, the 13th floor. These 5 are the most destructive to our homes, communities, education system, morality, freedom, and our order as a society, in which each person plays a part for the successful working order. Number 1, sexual gratification. 2, money and greed. 3, power and control. 4. Food and health. 5. Drugs and alcohol. All of these 5 ways to pleasure can be and often are very harmful when abused and not controlled properly. All have the ability to destroy a man, a society, and a free system. Also, our souls. No one of these 5 holds more importance or causes more destruction than another. All have equal importance and can be equally harmful if not held in check. All have different potential risks and affect the psychology and spirit of a person in different ways. An interesting fact is that instead of our media outlets expressing these truths, they present that idea that pleasure seeking is good and there is no harm in thwarting of moral principle. This issue of media is important for the millennial man because of the impact media has on how we've been choosing to live our lives. Media is often a gauge on what society deems acceptable and what is seen as shameful. Media glorifies pleasure seeking, avoiding the painful realities, and promotes throwing off restraint. To not be forthcoming about the potential psychological and spiritual problems associated with lack of self-control surely is a form of deception, and at the very least an injustice to our people by those who control the content of media. These issues have always held a prominent position in the order of society, past, present, and all will on into the future. Pleasure-seeking and self-control will always play a part in the successes and failures of people and their systems of order. There is and has been, in our recent past, a sense of something wrong. A lot of people sense an urgency to try and speak out on or actively seek solutions to problems we face, experiencing feelings of doom or looming threats to our well-being. Many people don't know exactly what the problems are, or sometimes we are led to believe that they are things that they really are not. These are the truths and facts that have me writing and you reading or listening to Millennial Man. An urgency to get leadership properly set where it will benefit all of us best. That is the goal. Most people in our nation of a sound and honest mind have a common belief and feeling that things are headed in the wrong direction. This is not a new sensation to mankind. It is what every movement, revolution, and revival has been based on and fueled by. A pressing need for something better, a positive change, and a sense of duty and purpose. The question is this: what is truly wrong? Why do we all sense a need for change? What exactly is it that we need to accomplish? These are serious questions with serious answers, and it takes serious and honest minds to address them. Pleasure-seeking is the only distraction to mankind that seriously hinders our ability to see clearly and think rationally. As we all know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, when we become obsessed and lose our self-control over any one of these 5 pleasures listed, we become part of the problem and not part of the solution. We have allowed pleasure-seeking to hinder, cripple, retard, and destroy our mental, spiritual, physical health, losing our ranks and effectiveness as millennial men and as leaders. A successful and just leader knows the need to be able to think clearly and rationally. You can be assured that a successful and just leader practices self-control and does not allow pleasure-seeking to consume them. We want to be able to consider truth and find answers to problems properly. We want honest leaders who possess wisdom and understanding and who are able to and willing to practice self-control. We need these things for ourselves as well because we are the leaders of our homes and our community, and we have potential to lead the nation as well. Who wants to be controlled by anything? When we don't control ourselves, we are controlled. The sad reality is a lot of us are controlled by one of these 5 means to pleasure, or a combination of more than one. When this is the case, being controlled by desire to pleasure self and not a desire for justice and the well-being of our neighbors and our youth, all kinds of problems arise. Why does this issue matter? Why do we as millennial men need to understand and practice self-control? Because without it, we are weak, blind to truth, mediocre in our responsibilities, and we can be easily deceived and manipulated. This weakness and blindness starts to impact us psychologically. emotionally, spiritually, and will surely affect our ability to lead and teach properly. I'm sure anyone reading this or listening to this can admit to and relate to these points to some extent. You probably can give examples of men you know who lack self-control or are obsessed with some form of pleasure seeking to the point it affects their responsibilities and duties. The question is, can we admit it when it is ourselves that fall into this category? Can we take proper steps to change when we do recognize that it is ourselves? I'm trying to convey the fact that this issue of pleasure seeking and self-control is more of a factor in our lives currently than we have been willing to admit and realize. In fact, surely lack of self-control and pleasure seeking keeps us stuck in a state of self-oppression. Often we blame oppression on some entity of a higher stature than ourselves, but really we are the oppressors of ourselves by hindering our ability to progress and hindering our strength, wisdom, effectiveness, and psychological state. When we do this by allowing pleasure seeking to become our main focus in life. Why is it we tend to get caught and stuck spending life trying to gain pleasure or fulfill some need? When it is an obsession, it is a crippling factor and holds men down from their full potential. I repeat points out of emphasis and importance. We want to accomplish as millennial men, what we want to accomplish as millennial men is a realization of facts when they have a direct correlation to our abilities and successes as leaders of homes, communities, and government. The fact of this chapter's matter is pleasure seeking and lack of self-control are the cause of a lot of problems on many levels, and as millennial men, we are not scared to deal with this truth. We want to grow, mature, and learn, all while finding success and progressing towards better things for ourselves and for our fellow men and women all over the world. Each chapter in this book is designed to help us reach good, productive goals, and also teach us how to avoid the destructive practices and trends that hinder true success. We want to right the wrongs we see, but we must first understand those wrongs. Strengthen our awareness and ability to know what the root of the problems are, especially within ourselves. That is what being a millennial man means. But once we reach this realization and take steps to change, our future is wide open. Anytime a man sets his heart, soul, and mind to a cause for good, for true justice, we will face opposition. One opposition will be ourselves and our natural desire for pleasure. 2. We will face opposition from outside entities. It is that opposition that would have you chasing pleasure all day, so that you will never realize the truth of the matter. Yes, there are those who gain from the millennial men's inability to be a leader, teacher, and provider in our homes, community, and government. There are also those who will suffer because of our inability in these areas. Our opposition does not want you to understand how, by pleasure seeking and lack of self-control, one is actually oppressing himself. Why is that? Why is that? Because if we are oppressing ourselves, we aren't a factor in anything that matters. Self-oppression is a win for our enemies and a loss for our nation, from homes to government. Millennial men, we must come to an understanding of what is really causing problems in our society. Sexual pleasures, greed, money, power, control, food, bad health, drugs, and alcohol, all can be conquered through self-control. You will not see indulgences of these things in our military or any training facility, and we shouldn't see them in higher institutions of learning either, or our homes and churches. Lack of respect for these principles of truth will always destroy a people. True consideration and action towards an education of these facts will always benefit a people.